It had been over 100 years since Earth last sent out a strong signal into space. No radio waves, no laser pulses, no deep space broadcasts. Humanity had grown quiet, on purpose. The silence began after the Kuiper event, when a strange object was found drifting near Neptune. It was not built by humans, it was cold and dark, shaped like a long triangle, and it pulsed with faint light every 17.3 minutes. Scientists tried to communicate with it. No response came, then one day it vanished. No explosion, no warning, just gone. After that, Earth's leaders made a choice. If someone, or something, was watching, humanity would not make itself known, and so for more than a century, Earth stayed silent. Colonies were built in the outer solar system, but they used only tight beam comms, messages aimed directly at their targets, never broadcast. Ships traveled between moons and planets, but they kept quiet unless needed. Even Mars, now home to nearly 500,000 people, did not send messages that could be heard beyond the asteroid belt. Humanity grew, but in silence. And then came the Arkwright. The Arkwright was not just a ship. It was a world, built on orbit around Earth. The massive vessel stretched more than 5 kilometers from end to end. Its belly held fusion engines capable of running for centuries. Inside its hull lived 20,000 souls, scientists, engineers, farmers, teachers, and families. They were going to Alpha Centauri, the closest star system to Earth, but they would not arrive for another 118 years. They would sleep most of the way, not die, not age, not really. In cryostasis, time passed, slowly. Their bodies slowed, their minds paused. When the ship reached its destination, they would wake again, young as the day they boarded. The Arkwright was meant to carry humanity forward, not just as explorers, but as survivors, a backup plan in case Earth ever fell. Not everyone knew this. Only a few high-ranking officers and scientists understood the real reason for the mission, but among them was Laura Moran. Laura was 32 when she boarded the Arkwright. She was not a pilot or a soldier. She was an engineer, systems specialist. Her job was to keep the life support systems running and to monitor the cryo chambers. She was also one of the few awake during the first leg of the journey. She had volunteered for that duty. As she walked through the halls of the great ship, she often felt alone. Most of the passengers were asleep, sealed in pods along the inner decks. The only sounds were the soft hum of machines and the occasional beep from her handheld scanner. "Systems check," she said into her comm unit. "Life support stable, cryo chambers holding steady, power levels nominal." A voice responded from the command deck. "Copy that, Laura. Keep us posted." The voice belonged to Captain Elias Ward. He was awake too, along with a small crew of navigators, medics, and engineers. Together, they would guide the Arkwright through the first few years of flight before they too went into stasis. Laura looked out through a viewing port. Beyond the glass, the stars were still. Silent. She thought about Earth, about how far away it already felt. Back on Earth, Julian Hartley watched the launch from Europa Station. He stood on the observation deck, hands behind his back, face calm. His uniform marked him as military, though he hadn't worn it in years. Now he was a diplomat, an advisor to the United Earth Council. Julian had once flown fighter craft above Mars. He had seen combat in the Jovian Belt, where rogue mining colonies clashed with Earth forces. He had lost friends there. That was why he left the service. Now he worked behind closed doors, trying to keep peace between the growing colonies and Earth's central government. But today was not about politics. Today was about the future. As the Arkwright drifted farther from Jupiter, Julian received a message from Earth Command. "Launch confirmed. Arkwright en route. All systems green. Proceed to next phase." He frowned. The wording was odd. Next phase wasn't part of the public mission plan. He turned to Commander Naomi Reyes, his contact on Europa Station. "What does next phase mean?" he asked. Naomi looked uneasy. "I don't know. We weren't told." Julian narrowed his eyes. He didn't like secrets. And lately there were more of them than ever. Daniel Choi sat alone in a listening post on the far side of the moon. His station was buried beneath layers of regolith, shielded from radiation and noise. Here, in the deepest silence, he listened. Not to human voices, but to the universe. Daniel was a xenolinguist. His job was to study any possible alien signals. He had spent years scanning the sky looking for patterns for meaning, and lately he had found something. Every 17.3 minutes a faint pulse came from the edge of the solar system, near Saturn. The same interval as the signal from the Kuiper object, all those years ago. He had reported it 3 times. No response. No action. Until now. A new message arrived from Earth Command. Cease all transmissions. Secure all logs. Do not speak of this to anyone. Daniel stared at the screen. He had seen that phrase before in old files. From the days before the silence, he saved a copy of the signal data to a private drive. Then he turned off his main console. 3 weeks after the Arkwright launched, something happened near Neptune. No one saw it happen. No one recorded it. But a powerful energy burst lit up the outer solar system for less than a second. It was enough for Daniel to detect it. He called Earth immediately. "They're here," he whispered. But no one answered. On Europa Station, Julian got word of the anomaly. He reviewed the sensor data himself. The energy spike was unlike anything human-made. It had come from a point in space where nothing should have been. He contacted Earth Command. "Report," he demanded. There was a long pause, then a reply. "We are aware. Continue monitoring. Say nothing." Julian clenched his jaw. He had heard enough lies. He left the command center and went to find Naomi. "We need answers," he said. She nodded. "I'll get you access to the deep archives." Back on the Arkwright, Laura was doing routine checks when an alert sounded. "Unidentified. Object detected," the AI announced. She looked at the display. A small craft, unknown origin, had appeared just outside the ship's trajectory. It was moving fast. She called the bridge. "Captain, we've got something out there." Ward's voice came through. "Can you identify it?" "No, sir. It's not registered. It's not ours." The object changed course. It was heading straight for the Arkwright. Laura's heart pounded. Should I warn the others? There was silence for a moment. Then Ward said, "Wake them up." In the deep archives of Europa Station, Julian and Naomi found what they were not supposed to see. Buried in old files, under a code name Project Echo, was a record of what happened after the Kuiper event. The object had not vanished. It had opened. Inside there were no bodies, no signs of life. Just a single message carved into the metal wall in symbols no one could translate. Until now. Daniel Choi had cracked part of it. The translation read, "They are coming." Julian stared at the screen. "They've known for years," he said. Naomi whispered, "What do we do?" He looked at her. "We tell the truth." On the Arkwright, the unknown object was closing in. Laura stood by the command panel, heart racing. The crew was waking up, groggy and confused. Some were scared. Captain Ward took control. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," he ordered. But before the ship could move, the object stopped. Then it exploded. Not violently. Not with fire or debris. It simply ceased to exist, like it had never been there. Laura stared at the screen. "Did we just imagine that?" Ward didn't answer. He looked at the data stream and saw something worse. The explosion had sent out a signal that would travel across the stars, and someone, somewhere, would hear it. Julian stood on the observation deck again, staring into the void. He had sent the files to every major colony, to the press, to independent scientists. The truth was out. Humanity had not been alone for 100 years, and now perhaps we never would be again. The silence was broken. The explosion near Neptune had sent a pulse across the solar system. It was not loud like a bomb. It was silent to human ears. But it carried energy, powerful and strange. the kind that could be seen from far away. Daniel, Choi saw it first. He was still on the moon, deep inside his listening post. He had been reviewing old data when the sensors lit up again. Another signal, he whispered. This one was different, stronger, faster. It did not repeat every 17.3 minutes like the last one. This one came once, then stopped. He ran the numbers. The signal had come from the same place as before, near Saturn. But this time something else had changed. Far out in space, near Mars, a probe picked up a second pulse. Then another. And another. Across the solar system, hidden listening stations began to report the same thing. Something was sending messages, and someone, or something, was receiving them. On Europa Station, Julian Hartley stood in front of a screen filled with reports. Every major colony had detected the signal. Some thought it was natural. Others feared it was not. He read the latest message from Earth Command. Remain calm. Do not react. We are monitoring. Julian clenched his jaw. He turned to Naomi Reyes, who stood beside him. They knew this would happen, he said. She nodded slowly. They just didn't tell us when. Julian looked at the data again. The signal had traveled fast, too fast for normal radio waves. It was more like a ripple in space itself. I need to get off this station, he said. Naomi raised an eyebrow. Why? Because if this is what I think it is, Julian said, we're about to find out why we've been hiding all these years. Laura Moran sat alone in the Arkwright's command room. The ship was quiet now. After the object exploded, the crew had gone back to work. Most were still waking up from stasis, but Laura couldn't sleep. She stared at the display. The explosion had left no debris, no heat, just a burst of energy and a signal. She replayed the data again. The signal had gone outward. Fast. Far. We sent it, she whispered. Behind her, Captain Ward entered the room. You're still awake? He asked. She didn't turn around. I can't stop thinking about it. Ward walked over. You're not the only one. Laura looked at him. What do you think it was? He sighed. I don't know. But I do know this. We weren't supposed to see it. She frowned. What do you mean? He sat down. Before we left Earth, I got a message. Classified. Said we might see something unusual. Told me not to respond. Laura's eyes widened. So they knew something was out here? Ward nodded. They knew and they didn't tell us. Laura felt a chill run through her. Then the alarm started. A new alert flashed on the screen. Incoming transmission detected. Laura leaned forward. It's not from Earth. Ward stood. Where is it coming from? Laura checked the coordinates. Her voice dropped. From outside the solar system. Daniel Choi stared at his monitor. The signal had reached beyond the edge of known space, and now something was answering. He recorded the return pulse. It was weaker, slower, but clear. He ran it through his translation software. The result made his blood run cold. It wasn't a message, it was a warning. Back on Earth, panic was starting to grow. The public had learned about the signal. News networks showed images of the sky. Scientists argued on live feeds. Governments issued vague statements. But behind closed doors, real decisions were being made. In a secret meeting beneath Geneva, the United Earth Council gathered. One man spoke. This changes everything, he said. Another replied. We always knew it would come to this. A third added. We should have told them sooner. The leader of the council, a woman named Director Lang, looked at them all. We kept the truth hidden to protect humanity, she said. Now the silence is broken. We must decide how to respond. There was a long pause. Then a voice came through. The comms. Message received from Arkwright. Lang looked up. What does it say? The assistant read the message aloud. We received a response. Unknown origin, unknown language, but it is not ours. Lang closed her eyes. The war had begun. Julian arrived on Mars 2 days later. He had taken a transport ship from Europa. The trip was tense. Every pilot, every passenger seemed to be watching the sky. When he landed in New Valles Marineris, he was met by a group of officers. "Welcome back, sir," one said. Julian shook his head. "Don't call me sir. I'm not military anymore." The officer nodded. "Understood, we have orders from Earth Command." Julian followed them into a secure building. Inside, a large screen showed maps of the outer solar system. A man in a dark suit stood waiting. "Mr. Hartley," he said. "We've been expecting you." Julian crossed his arms. "I want answers." The man smiled. "You already have them." Julian stepped closer. "Then tell me what's really going on." The man tapped a button. The screen changed. It showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked places where signals had been found. "These are other civilizations," the man said. "Some ancient, some recent. All of them gone." Julian stared at the screen. The man continued. "We found ruins, ships, planets with no life. They all had one thing in common." Julian asked. "What?" They went silent. Julian felt a weight in his chest. "They tried to hide," the man said. "Just like us." Julian looked at him. "And it didn't save them." The man nodded. "No. It just delayed the end." Julian turned away. "We need to warn the colonies," he said. The man said nothing. On the arc right, Laura sat in the observation deck. She watched the stars. They seemed colder now. Captain Ward joined her. "You okay?" he asked. She shook her head. "Not really." He sat beside her. "We didn't ask for this," he said, "but we're part of it now." Laura looked at him. "Do you think we'll survive it?" Ward didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Survival isn't about strength. It's about knowing what to do when the silence ends." Laura looked at the stars again. Somewhere out there, someone was listening, and now they knew we were here. Daniel Choi packed his things. He had copies of the signal, copies of the warnings, copies of the history that had been buried. He was leaving the moon. He had one goal now, to make sure the truth didn't die with us. On Mars, Julian stood on a balcony overlooking the red sands. He looked up at the sky. The stars were still, but soon they wouldn't be. He whispered to himself, "The silence is gone." And now, the echoes begin. The first attack came without warning. It began near Mars. One moment, the red planet's orbit was filled with cargo ships and research stations. The next, a flash of light split the sky. Then silence. No distress calls. No escape pods. Just gone. Laura. Moran watched it happen from the Arkwright's observation deck. She had been reviewing system logs when the alert came through. Mars orbital station destroyed. Unknown cause. She ran to the command room. Captain Ward was already there. His face was pale. "Show me," he said. A screen lit up. It showed footage from a nearby mining platform. In the video, something appeared in space, a dark shape, fast and silent. It moved like it knew where to go. Then it fired. Not lasers. Not missiles. Something else. The station exploded in a wave of light and vanished. Laura whispered, "What was that?" Ward didn't answer. He turned to the crew. "All hands," he said. "Prepare for emergency jump." Julian Hartley stood on Europa Station, watching the same event unfold. His heart pounded as more reports came in. Luna Base, destroyed. Titan Research Outpost, silent. Earth's outer defense grid, failing. Across the solar system, attacks were happening all at once. Fast, precise, ruthless. Naomi Reyes ran into the command center. "They're not just attacking," she said. "They're targeting our strongest points." Julian looked at her. "Who?" She hesitated. "We don't know, but they're not human." Julian clenched his fists. He had feared this day would come. Now it was here. He turned to the comms officer. "Get me Earth Command." There was no response. Just static. Daniel Choi sat alone in his small listening post on the moon. He had seen the attack before anyone else. The signal, the pulse that had come from beyond Saturn. It wasn't just a message. It was a call. And now someone had answered. He stared at his screen. The enemy fleet was moving fast. They weren't stopping. They weren't asking questions. They were erasing us. He packed his files, all of them, every record, every translation, every secret log he had ever copied. He had one mission now, to survive, and to make sure the truth lived on. Back on the Arkwright, Laura helped prepare the ship for departure. The engines roared to life, the cryo chambers locked down. Families gathered together, scared but trying to stay calm. "We can't stay here," Captain Ward said. "We have to move," Laura nodded. "Where are we going?" Ward looked at the navigation map. Tau Ceti. Laura blinked. "That's not our original destination." "I know," he said. "But we can't go to Alpha Centauri anymore. That path leads straight into the war." Laura understood they were running. On Mars, Julian made a decision Europa Station would fall soon. Mars wouldn't last much longer. He turned to Naomi. "We need to get out," he said. "Now." She looked at him. "Where do we go?" Julian thought for a moment. "There's a resistance base on Ceres," he said. "If anyone's still alive, they'll be there." Naomi nodded. They left the command center and made their way to the shuttle bay. Behind them, alarms screamed. Outside, the sky burned. Daniel reached the launch pad just as another explosion shook the moon. His transport ship was waiting. Small, fast, not built for long trips. But it would have to do. He climbed aboard and sealed the door. As the engines fired, he looked back at Earth. It was still there for now, he whispered, "Please hold on." Then he left orbit. Laura sat in the command chair as the Arkwright prepared to jump. The ship's AI counted down. 5, 4, 3. Laura held her breath. 2, 1. The stars blurred. Space folded around them. And then, silence. They were gone. Julian landed on Ceres 20 hours later. The asteroid base was dark. Most lights were out, only a few areas still had power. He stepped onto the landing ramp. Naomi followed. A group of soldiers met them. "Mr. Hartley," one said. "You're early." Julian frowned. "Early for what?" The soldier looked at him. "You didn't get the message?" he asked. "The war has started. We're organizing a resistance." Julian's eyes narrowed. "Who's leading it?" The soldier pointed toward a large building in the distance. "A woman named Eliza Grant," he said. "Former Earth diplomat. She says she knows who's attacking us." Julian exchanged a look with Naomi. They followed the soldier. Inside the building, dozens of people worked around screens and maps. Refugees, soldiers, scientists. At the front, a tall woman stood giving orders. Julian recognized her immediately. Eliza Grant. He walked up to her. "You knew this would happen," he said. She turned to him. Her face was tired but sharp. "I hoped I was wrong," she said. "But yes, I knew." Julian crossed his arms. "Then tell me, who are we fighting?" Eliza took a deep breath. "They're called the Virex," she said. "An old race. A war machine. They've been sweeping across the galaxy for centuries." She looked at him. "They destroy civilizations," she said. "Unless those civilizations fight back." Julian felt cold. "And humanity?" he asked. Eliza's voice was quiet. "We were next." Laura woke up after the jump. The Arkwright had arrived near Tau Ceti. The ship was intact, so were most of the passengers. But they were not alone. A second signal had arrived during the jump. This time it was not a warning. It was a message. "We see you. We know who you are. Prepare." Laura read it again. Her hands trembled. "Captain." Ward entered the room. "What does it say?" he asked. Laura looked at him. "It says," she said slowly, "they're coming." Julian stood with Eliza in the command center. Maps of the solar system filled the walls. Red marks showed where the Virex had attacked. Yellow dots marked possible refugee zones. Eliza pointed at one. "This one," she said. "Titan. There may still be survivors." Julian nodded. "I'll go." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "You're not military anymore." Julian smiled slightly. "Maybe not, but I've fought before, and I'm not letting them take everything." Eliza studied him. Then she said, "Fine. Take a team, get in, get survivors, get answers." Julian turned to leave. "Julian," Eliza called. He stopped. She said, "Be careful. These aren't just soldiers. They erase memories. They rewrite minds." Julian frowned. "How do you know that?" Eliza looked away. "Because," she said, "they almost got me once." Daniel arrived on Titan 2 days later. He had followed the signal. Hoped to find someone, anyone who could help. The surface was ruined. Most buildings were gone. Fires still burned in the icy ground. He searched for life signs. Finally, he found one. A small shelter. Hidden beneath the ice. He knocked on the hatch. After a long pause, it opened. Inside, a woman stood holding a weapon. She looked at Daniel. "Who are you?" she asked. Daniel lowered his pack. "My name is Daniel Choi," he said. "I think we're the only ones left." The woman studied him, then she said, "Come in." Laura sat alone in the command room. The message still glowed on the screen. "Prepare." She looked at the stars outside. Somewhere out there, the Virex were coming, and this time, we couldn't hide. Julian stood on the edge of a crater, looking at the remains of a Virex ship. It was broken, burned, half buried in the Martian dust. Naomi knelt beside it. "This isn't just a scout craft," she said. "This was part of a larger force." Julian nodded. "They're spreading out." Naomi looked at him. "What do we do?" Julian looked at the sky. "We fight," he said, "and we remember who we are." Daniel sat with the survivor inside the shelter. Her name was Mia. She had been a scientist, part of a lost colony. Daniel showed her the data. "The Virex are coming," he said. "But we're not alone." Mia looked at the screen. "Then we need to warn the others," she said. Daniel nodded. "We will," he said. "But first, we survive." Laura stood on the Arkwright's bridge. The crew waited for orders. She looked at the display. Another signal had arrived. This one was different. It was not from the Virex. It was from another ship. "Human," Laura whispered. "We're not alone." She pressed a button. "This is the Arkwright," she said. "Do you read me?" A voice came through. "Yes." Laura closed her eyes. The war had changed everything. But maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. The war had changed everything. Years passed since the first Virex attack. Earth was no longer the center of human life. It was a memory, half ruined, half controlled by the enemy. The colonies fought back where they could, but survival had become harder than resistance. And across the stars, new lives were growing in silence. On Tau Ceti, the Arkwright had built a home. It wasn't what they had planned. They had left Earth as explorers, not soldiers. But now, they were refugees, survivors, a new branch of humanity trying to stay alive in the dark. Laura Moran stood on the edge of the settlement, looking at the sky. She had aged. Not much. Only a few years had passed for her, thanks to cryosleep. But she felt older. Tired. Behind her, Captain Ward walked up. "You're out here again," he said. Laura nodded. "I like to watch." Ward looked up with her. "They'll come," he said. "Eventually." Laura didn't answer right away. "I know," she whispered. "But maybe not yet." Back on Earth, the war had turned into something worse than fighting. The Virex didn't just destroy cities or ships, they erased memories, rewrote minds, turned people into shadows of themselves. Alive but empty. In the ruins of New York, a man named Kevin Reyes led a small group of rebels. He wasn't a soldier. He hadn't been trained for war, but he had survived long enough to learn how to fight. His team moved through the broken city, hiding from Virex patrols. They stole supplies, sent messages, tried to keep hope alive. One night near an old subway station, Kevin found something strange, a buried data vault. Inside, files, old Earth records, military logs, and one message that made his blood run cold. Humanity must remember who we are, before they make us forget. Kevin read it over and over. Then he copied it. And he ran. On Titan, Daniel Choi sat in a dimly lit room, surrounded by screens. He had spent years studying the Virex. Their language, their tech, their patterns. And now, he understood something no one else did. They weren't just fighting humans. They were erasing history. Every time they conquer a species, Daniel told Mia, the scientist who had saved him, they wipe their knowledge, their culture, their stories. Mia frowned. Why? Daniel looked at her. Because if you erase the past, he said, you control the future. Mia stared at the screen. So we're not just fighting to survive, she said. We're fighting to be remembered. Daniel nodded. We have to keep our memories alive, he said. Or we lose more than this war. Back on Tau Ceti, first Laura watched a child run through the fields. Her name was Lila. She had been born on the Arkwright during the journey. She had never seen Earth, never heard its oceans, never walked under its blue skies. To her, Earth was just a word. Laura thought about that often. What would happen if Earth was truly gone? Would Lila ever know what it meant to be human? Would any of them? She turned to Ward. We need to teach them, she said. Ward raised an eyebrow. Teach who? The children, Laura said. About Earth. About before all this. Ward sighed. You think they want to know? Laura looked at Lila again. They should, she said. Because if they don't, we won't be people anymore. Just ghosts. Kevin Reyes sent his message to every surviving colony. He used old Earth codes, hidden frequencies, anything to avoid the Virex listening posts. His message was simple. We are still here, we remember. Join us. Across the solar system, others received it, some responded, some died trying. But the network grew. Small rebel cells, hidden bases, refugees willing to fight. And among them was someone unexpected, Naomi Reyes, Julian's old partner. One of the last survivors of the Mars evacuation. She had been hiding on Ceres for years, helping organize supply lines and intelligence runs. Now, she answered Kevin's call. Daniel and Mia prepared to leave Titan. They had gathered enough data. Enough proof of what the Virex were doing. We can't stay here, Mia said. They'll find us soon. Daniel nodded. We need to reach the Arkwright. Mia looked at him. You think they'll help? Daniel smiled slightly. They might not have weapons, but they have something better. What? Daniel pointed at the archive they had built. Our memories, he said. That's the real weapon. Laura stood in the main hall of the Arkwright settlement. Around her, people gathered, children, farmers, engineers, pilots. They listened as she spoke. We came here to start over, she said. But we can't forget why we left. We were running from something terrible. And now, we might be the only ones left who still remember. A young man raised his hand. But what if they come here? He asked. Laura looked at him. They will, she said. Someday. Another voice asked. Then why not run farther? Why not hide again? Laura shook her head. Because if we keep hiding, she said, we stop being who we are. She stepped forward. We are not just survivors, she said. We are the last voices of Earth, and we have to speak. There was silence. Then applause, quiet at first, then louder. Captain. Ward stood beside her. You really believe that, don't you? He asked. Laura looked at him. I do, she said. And I think we're going to prove it. Julian Hartley stood on a ruined spaceport watching a ship land. He had spent years moving between rebel bases, fighting, planning, losing people. Now he had a mission. Find the Arkwright. Warn them. Help. Them. He saw Naomi step off the ship. She walked toward him. "They're coming," she said. Julian nodded. "I know." Naomi looked at him. "Do you think they'll fight?" Julian looked at the sky. "They already are," he said. Kevin Reyes stood in a hidden base beneath Europa. He had lost most of his team, but he had kept the signal alive. He looked at the screen. More messages were coming in. From Mars, from Ganymede, from deep space stations. People were answering his call. He whispered to himself, "We are not alone. And we will not be forgotten." Daniel and Mia arrived on Tau Ceti A 2 weeks later. Laura met them outside the landing zone. "You made it," she said. Daniel nodded. Barely. He handed her a drive. "This has everything," he said. "Proof of what the Virex are doing, records of other civilizations, our own history." Laura took the drive. She looked at him. "What now?" Daniel smiled. "Now," he said, "we fight with what we know." On Earth, the Virex tightened their grip. Cities fell silent. People vanished. Memories were wiped. But in the shadows, a whisper spread. "Remember Earth." And somewhere, deep in a ruined library, a child opened an old book. It was filled with stories. He read them aloud. And in that moment, the war changed. Because someone remembered. Laura Moran stood on the observation deck of the Arkwright. The stars outside were quiet. No warships, no explosions, just silence. But she knew it wouldn't last. Behind her, Captain Ward entered the room. "We're ready," he said. Laura turned to him. "Are we?" she asked. Ward looked at her for a long time. "No," he said. "But we don't have a choice." Laura nodded. He was right. They had spent months preparing, gathering data, building defenses, training people who had never held a weapon before. And now the enemy was coming. The Virex had found them. Daniel Choi sat in the command center with Mia and Julian Hartley. They had just finished reviewing the latest reports. "They're moving. Faster than we expected," Julian said. "They've already taken Ganymede." Mia frowned. "That means they're closing in on Ceres." Julian nodded. "We need to act now." Daniel looked at the screen. It showed a map of known human colonies. Most were gone. Some were silent. Only a few still fought back. He sighed. "What do we do?" Julian looked at him. "We send our voice into the stars," he said, "before it's too late." Kevin Reyes sat alone in a ruined building on Earth. His team was gone. His base was destroyed. But he still had one working comms unit. He typed, slowly, hands shaking. "This is Kevin Reyes. If anyone hears this, know that we are not gone. We are still here. We remember Earth." He sent the message across every frequency he could find. Then he waited. No reply came. But somewhere, someone would hear. And that was enough. On Tau Ceti A, Laura called a meeting. People gathered in the central hall. Children, farmers, engineers, fighters. She stood in front of them. "We can't win this war the way they want us to," she said. "They have more weapons, more ships, more power." A man in the crowd raised his hand. "Then why fight?" he asked. Laura looked at him. "Because we have something they can't take," she said. "What?" She stepped forward. "Our memories." The room went quiet. Laura continued. "They erase history, they wipe minds, they try to make people forget who they are." She looked around. "But as long as we remember," she said, "we are still human." There was a pause, then applause. Quiet at first, then louder. Captain Ward smiled beside her. "You really believe that?" he said. Laura nodded. "I do," she said. "And I think we're about to prove it." Julian stood with Naomi on the edge of the settlement. They watched the sky. "They'll be here soon," Naomi said. Julian nodded. I know. Naomi looked at him. What happens after we send the signal? She asked. Julian didn't answer, right away. Finally, he said, I don't know. But I do know this. We can't let them win by silence. Naomi studied him. You think it will matter? She asked. Julian looked up at the stars. If even one person hears it, he said, then, yes, it will matter. Daniel and Mia worked through the night. They loaded the final archive into the Arkwright's main transmitter. It contained everything, Earth's history, human culture, music, art, science, stories, all of it. Daniel pressed a button. It's ready, he said. Mia looked at him. This could reach other systems, she said. Other civilizations. Daniel nodded. That's the point, he said. Mia smiled slightly. For the first time, she said, we're not hiding. Daniel looked at the screen. No, he said. For the first time, we're speaking. Laura stood in the control room. The signal was set to launch in 10 minutes. Outside, the sky darkened. She looked out the window. In the distance, lights appeared. Not stars. Ships. Virex ships. Laura's heart pounded. They're here, she whispered. Ward walked in. They're scanning the planet, he said. They know we're here. Laura turned to him. Then we send it now. Ward nodded. Do it. Laura pressed the final command. Signal launching. Across the system, the message traveled. Fast. Far. Unstoppable. It left Tau Ceti E and shot into deep space. It carried humanity's voice, their stories, their memories, their truth. Laura watched the screen. Then she whispered, we are not alone, and we never will be again. Julian led the defense team to the outer perimeter. The Virex had landed. They moved like shadows, silent, fast, deadly. Julian raised his weapon. Naomi stood beside him. They're not stopping, she said. Julian nodded. Then neither do we. The first wave hit. Lasers flashed. Explosions lit the ground. Julian fired. One down. Two more took its place. He ducked behind cover. Naomi shouted over the noise. We can't hold them forever. Julian looked toward the sky. We don't have to, he said. They only need a little time. Daniel ran through the halls of the Arkwright. The ship was under attack. Smoke filled the corridors. Alarms screamed. He reached the command room. Laura was still there. The signal is done, she said. Daniel looked at the screen. It showed the message traveling across space, farther, faster, reaching unknown worlds. Daniel exhaled. Good. Laura looked at him. Now what? Daniel picked up his pack. Now, he said. We survive. Kevin Reyes sat in the ruins of an old library. His comms unit crackled. He heard the signal, the Arkwright's message. He closed his eyes. Then he opened them. He stood up. He walked outside, and he began to speak. He told stories about Earth, about the ocean, about cities filled with light, about people who refused to be forgotten. Someone listened. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. And that was enough. On a distant world, far beyond human space, a small probe drifted. It picked up the signal. It decoded the message. It stored the data. Then it sent it onward, to another world, and then another, and another. Across the galaxy, humanity had spoken, and someone would hear. Laura and Daniel stood together on the edge of the settlement. The battle raged around them. Captain Ward was gone. So was Naomi. So many others. But they were still standing. Laura looked at Daniel. Do you think it made a difference? She asked. Daniel looked at the sky. I hope so, he said. I think we'll know someday. Laura nodded. She looked at the stars and she whispered, we were quiet for so long. Now we must speak.